The biggest concern was about the decision to allow an imam to ask questions, an imam who has later exposed as well. He's now actually lost his, been suspended from his job as a deputy head teacher of a primary school. Not only had he posted some extraordinarily anti-Semitic tweets online, he'd also posted tweets about how women, young girls, should never be alone with a man because, well, basically, to all intents and purposes, it'd be her fault if she were raped because a man couldn't control himself. Very worrying views for someone who was in charge of a primary school with a female pupils as well. There's been quite a lot of concern about that because the fact that, again, there wasn't any due diligence done. Now, the BBC defence on this is that, look, we did look at this guy online social media presence. This imam, though, it turns out had deactivated his Twitter account when they were investigating him. And yet other people pointing out that, well, even as late as Sunday, people were replying to tweets that he'd posted. Do we have any evidence that his account was ever deactivated?
We can't tell without getting a warrant and getting Twitter to tell us whether that actually is true or not. It did seem a little bit unfortunate that it wasn't there when they looked and was there when everyone else looked. Who am I to cast aspersions on BBC journalists?
There's been a lot of accusations of, easy opportunity for a bit of BBC bashing. They're under a lot of pressure over this free TV licence for the over 75s, but automatically handed out, that being withdrawn, and poorer pensioners who don't qualify for pension credit not getting it. They're constantly under attack, constantly being criticised over the issue, particularly over anti-Tory, anti-Brexit bias. Is this just another stick for people to hit them over their head and let you get? Look, it was a bit of a chaotic debate. It wasn't good television, no question at all. But actually, people are making a mountain out of a molehill.
Is it a stick? Well, it's actually about a whole tree, really, at this time. I think it's on the front pages of the newspapers. It plays into BBC bias. It plays into what the hell are they doing with our licence fee money. And by the way, some of us work very hard on our BBC bashing, so don't knock it.
Now, there is a plan for a question time style programme with the final two candidates on the BBC, and also for one-to-one interviews with Andrew Neil. Those are now they're both in doubt because of the concerns about bias. Now, I, for one of the things I felt certainly during the leadership debates and also over Brexit and over all the candidates last time round to be Prime Minister, that actually seeing those one-to-one interviews is incredibly useful. Someone actually, especially someone as good as Andrew Neil, drilling down into the detail.
Yes, exactly. I think we all know we'd all quite like to see Andrew Neil tear them apart. So I, for one, I think the campaigns will try and use it as an excuse, and we'll try and use it in the negotiations. And there's always a bit of a give and take. I mean, this has always been the case. Craig Oliver for Cameron used to, try and manipulate the format of the election night programming to suit them. I think Boris's people will be saying, "Look, let me make this very tough on our guy, more tough on him than." Yeah. So I think there'll be some haggling and horse trading, but I don't think they can escape having some kind of scrutiny. And it's the BBC, it's the biggest organisation. They will get some lesson. And I, for one, would quite like to see Andrew Neil shred the hell out of them.
I have to say, those are always the programmes that they must watch. I think the woman learns the most. But there's no doubt at all Sky News and ITV have been rubbing their hands with glee, haven't they?
Yes, I think well, they have slightly different formats, don't they? Sky's is always quite pacey and American style, and ITV is more kind of consumer orientated, and what mums in the home, and people who aren't very interested in politics. They have a sort of different approach to the way they do the shows. Something for everybody.
Let's just finally ask you about the ballots today. One this morning, one this afternoon, assuming we don't see not just the lowest ranked candidate drop out today, but perhaps the next one doing a deal. Many are expecting Sajid Javid, lowest on 38 votes yesterday, that he'll be the one who falls by the wayside first. And therefore, it's Hunt and Gove fighting it out for second place behind Boris. Who do you think is going to end up in second place?
I think the bookies have got it right, and Hunt will be in second place. And as you say, I spoke to the teams, and it's Sajid's people expecting to go out this morning, which shows that nice guys finish fourth sometimes.
And just finally, Rory Stewart, I know you tweeted out that you'd made a nice little bit of money. Lots of punters getting very excited about Rory Stewart, despite the fact not much excitement for him among Tory party members, or indeed many Tory MPs. It appears he was gently, just for one occasion, lent some votes by many people think the Boris Johnson camp to keep him in and knock Dominic Raab out. But down to 27 votes yesterday, he's thrown out.
I'm sceptical of that. And in fact, Rory himself last night said, no, I messed up the debate, and that's why I lost. I think it's a very dangerous game. We all like to, including me, I like to say the Tories are the most slippery electorate in the world. But if you start lending votes to people, odd things start happening. It can become a habit, voting for the wrong person.
Thank you very much indeed, Paul Stays. What has he told you about what he plans to do to deliver Brexit?
So I think people overinterpreted that debate. He talked about the feasibility, when asked, of getting a deal by the end of October, or indeed being ready for a WTO Brexit. But he's absolutely committed to leaving by the end of October. He confirmed that to me. And, ultimately, Boris is one of these wonderfully mercurial characters, and so there will always be people asking those kinds of questions. But his support is premised on it and is conditioned on it, and I think he's embraced that. So there's always uncertainties in politics, and he's got to hold a coalition together, by which I mean a coalition within the Conservative Party. But I'm confident he'll do it. I think he's a conviction Brexiteer, and I think he's said the right things. And of course, when you have the debates and everyone is trying to chip away, people will over-interpret. But even since, he's been clear about this. In fact, he took a harder line on getting out by the end of October in one sense than I did. So I'm pretty confident that he will stick that course.
Are you pleased that someone who has very much a very different line from these things, Rory Stewart, is out of the race now? What did you make of his candidacy and him as a man?
I like him. I've known Rory since we came in 2010. He's different. I think people are interested in someone who's authentic. I disagree with him on quite a few policy issues, and in particular on Brexit. I didn't think his plan stacked up. But I'm not going to badmouth any other candidate in the race. It takes a bit of gumption to do what he did, and I admire him for it.
Well, some are claiming from his camp that he was stitched up by Boris Johnson, that Boris Johnson lent some votes to Rory Stewart to force you into bottom place, to get rid of you because he was scared of your appeal. Tory party members, you've had growing appeal for them, no doubt about that, and that he wanted you out of the race and then withdrew those votes. We suddenly lost 10 supporters yesterday, down to 27 out of the race. That this has all been some dirty tactics from Boris Johnson. What do you make of that accusation?
Well, if that's correct, it rather benefited Rory. So I'm not sure what the complaint is, but I've heard of worse shenanigans in a Tory leadership contest. But the fact is, you've got to get enough people voting for you so that you don't find yourself in the situation where people are bartering their votes. But that's bread and butter in leadership contests. And I think it happened at the margins, if at all.
And have you been offered a job by Boris Johnson in return for your support?
No, I didn't ask. And in fact, one of the things I said to him was that I hoped he would be in a position to appoint the best team on merit. Because I think it's very important. One of the galvanising things of any team is that the boss, whether that's in business or in politics, has a free hand. I don't mean just to stack it with people that are your loyalists, but people that give you something you don't have. I sort of take the Abraham Lincoln team of rivals approach to these things. But ultimately, if he becomes Prime Minister, he's got to make that decision for himself. And I think people need to respect him. It's one of the prerogatives of being Prime Minister, to put your team together, and you'll be judged by it. And
any jobs that particularly you'd like to do? You were Brexit Secretary. Would you like to be involved in the Brexit negotiations? Maybe be Chancellor? An awful lot of people seem to be gunning for that job.
Yeah, look, I just think it's wrong in principle to start talking about that stuff before the leader's been appointed, first. And secondly, it's not really my style of politics. I want the next leader to have a free hand to put together the best team. And, obviously I'm willing to serve whoever that may be, and I hope very much it'll be Boris, but I'm not going to sort of be so presumptuous to start bidding or haggling for jobs. I just find it unprofessional. It's not what happens in other walks of life.
Have you had conversations one-on-one with Boris Johnson? Maybe even, I don't know, got something in writing about how he is going to deliver Brexit? It's all very well, yeah, look, he won 2 campaigns to be a leader, London mayor as a Conservative in a Labour voting city, no doubt at all about that. He is somebody who people, you take him into your constituency, Tory MPs say to me that people come running out of their homes, get out of their cars, they want to shake his hand, they want a selfie with him. He reaches other parts of the country that most Tories can't reach. But has he told you how he's actually going to deliver Brexit? Because fundamentally, if he doesn't actually deliver Brexit on October the 31st, an awful lot of that support for him is going to disappear very quickly, isn't it?
I like the way you make Boris sound like a Heineken, that he refers to parts other Conservatives cannot reach. I think that should be his new slogan. But the answer to your question is that the law that Parliament passed, that the House of Commons voted for, is that we leave at the end of the time period, and that is now the 31st of October. That can only be extended under the current laws by the act of a Prime Minister. So Theresa May was able to extend it from the 29th of March. But if Boris isn't willing to extend it, which he isn't, then that is the default in law, as the Institute for Government has pointed out. And Parliament voted for this. We have a lot of rubbish talked of MPs saying they'll never agree to leaving on the 31st of October. Well, they forget that they voted for, with a huge majority, the Article 50 Act that set the timetable for leaving, and then with a slightly smaller majority for the Withdrawal Act that repeals the 1972 European Communities Act, which is our basis of membership.
So you're absolutely convinced, no question at all, that Boris Johnson is going to be able to get a deal, get some version of Brexit through, and that the remaining dominated Parliament isn't going to try and stop it, even though, like Dominic Raab, even Philip Hammond, the current Chancellor, and many on the Labour benches, Lib Dems, SNP, have told us quite categorically that's what they're planning to do.
I can't promise you that he will get a deal, though he will try to get a deal, but that we will leave. There are only 2 ways of stopping us leaving on the 31st of October. One is a vote of no confidence that establishes a new government, and that, I think, is going to be very difficult because not many Conservative MPs are going to wish to put a Marxist in 10 Downing Street. And that's the real choice. You're saying, do we leave the European Union or do we put Jeremy Corbyn into Downing Street? And Conservatives are unlikely to take the choice of Jeremy Corbyn. And the second way of doing it is to legislate to repeal the existing laws, so to revoke Article 50 and go against the 17.4 million people who voted to leave the European Union. And it's really interesting that even arch Remainers are still saying that they accept the results of the referendum. There's a very, very small number who are calling for outright revocation.
So you just think they're simply not going to have the votes and therefore it's going to be able to happen no matter what, despite the concerns of many on the Remain side in Parliament?
I think that's right. And they should remember what they voted for before.
And in terms of any sort of, well, as soon as, let's assume, Boris Johnson, again, as an assumption, we'll come to that in just a moment, that he did become Prime Minister late July, in a month's time. What should his priorities be? Should it be about preparing for a no-deal Brexit? Almost people are talking about going on a war footing, for goodness sake, preparing for leaving in a no-deal Brexit. Or should his attention go to trying to negotiate a deal, whether a version of the withdrawal agreement without the Irish backstop, or an entirely new deal going back to perhaps the free trade agreement that was originally offered by Brussels? What should his priorities be for you and other members of the ERG?
Well, the no-deal preparations are very well advanced, and talking to people who have been ministers in the DEXU department, which is in charge of no-deal planning, that most of what needed to be done has been done. So you want to make sure that anything else is done between now and the 31st of October. But huge progress has been made in preparing for leaving without a deal. So you then come back to what deal ought Boris Johnson to be asking for. I think it's clear that the withdrawal agreement is defunct, kaput, and therefore trying to pick and mix the withdrawal agreement is unlikely to be successful, though there are some things in it that you would want to grant. So you would want to grant citizens' rights, for example, and you'd want to do that unilaterally, regardless of the rest of the agreement. So I think you would be looking at a free trade agreement to see if the European Union would like that.
And even though the likes of Juncker, Tusk, Verhofstadt, everyone has said there isn't any negotiation, there's nothing to negotiate, do you take that as meaning that's the withdrawal agreement and you put that to one side and you start again and therefore negotiations could be reopened?
Well, everybody says that what the European Union says is Holy Writ and that it can't be changed. But actually, we know that's not true. Bear in mind, the treaties state quite clearly that there are to be no bailouts in the euro. And when Greece went bankrupt, there were massive bailouts. I think they spent £500 billion euros on bailouts, or agreed a bailout fund of that size. So the European Union doesn't always do what it says it's planning to do, and this is a negotiation, and in a negotiation, both sides move from their starting positions. That's just the way of negotiations.
Well, you say that the EU doesn't always do what it says it's planning to do, but neither does Boris Johnson. Do you trust him, and do you think that he's going to be able to withstand all the scrutiny he's going to get over the next few weeks with all these hustings, media following every single word he says, and actually having to stay consistent and deliver the lines and perhaps not go off-piste?
Oh, I trust Boris implicitly. I think he is a very trustworthy individual.
Do you?
And yes,
Why?
I do. Why? Because he has a record of delivering. When he was Mayor of London, he delivered on what he said he would set out to do. So he built more houses than he promised. He was able to cut the council tax. He brought crime down. He even got rid of those dreadful bendy buses, which everybody said he wouldn't be able to do. He delivers on his promises, and he is a very committed and thoughtful individual. So I've got confidence in him. And in terms of the scrutiny, the great thing about Boris is we know everything about him already, that he's been a public figure for such a long time that there is... Are
there no other skeletons in his closet that could come out that could turn the debate or turn the vote?
Boris has faced scrutiny for decades, and therefore I think this is a non-issue, that it's the other candidates who have needed to face more scrutiny because they were much less well-known figures before this process
And just
started.
finally, coming to those other candidates, it's very likely people are saying that Sajid Javid, the Home Secretary, will be knocked out today. The race for the second place, therefore, between Hunt and Gove. Who would you prefer for Boris Johnson to come up against? Another Leaver like Michael Gove or someone like Jeremy Hunt?
I don't have a preference. I think if you're backing and strongly backing one candidate, it's not for you to decide who the other candidate should be. And so you're going to forgive me, I hope, but I will dodge that question.
You don't think there would be an easier candidate for Boris to beat? On the basis that the idea that you've got 70% Leave voting Tory MPs, Tory members, in which case whoever is the Leaver in the debate automatically wins for them. But if there are two Leavers like Boris Johnson and Michael Gove, does that perhaps shake it up a little bit?
I think the Tory party's lucky that it's got so many strong candidates. So, frankly, I think any of the four in the final four would make excellent Prime Minister.
And would you be happy to serve in a cabinet under any of those?
Well, I doubt any of them will offer me any post in the cabinet, but I'll do anything I can to support whoever is the leader of the Conservative Party.